Welcome into This is MLS. I'm your host, Kaylin Kyle. Let's bring in the guys because I couldn't do this show alone. Sasha Kleshton, Dax McCarty, and Mo Adu. We're heading into Matchday 6. I feel like the 2025 season is absolutely flying. Sash, let's start with you. What's maybe the biggest headline that you're looking forward to this coming weekend?
Well, it's not what I'm looking forward to. I'm going to look back a little bit and say it's Laurent Courtois being fired by CF Montreal after 5 weeks of a season. Listen, I don't know if Laurent Courtois being fired is an indictment on him. I think he might be a solid coach in Major League Soccer, but you're talking about a club that when you look at their roster build with one DP, Giacomo Veroni, who comes from New England, who wasn't even good on a bad team last season, that's your one DP. Then you have 3 TAM players that aren't producing anything for this club right now. What was the expectation for Courtois? Also, it's a team that has started with 5 straight road games. Like, the finger has to be pointed at somebody, and I don't think it's Courtois that's necessarily the one to blame.
Yeah, Kay, for me, I'm looking at Orlando City. Orlando City has started the season results-wise a bit inconsistent, but you know what hasn't been inconsistent are their designated players. Any GM or coach in MLS would take the production that Orlando City is getting out of their DPs right now. Marko Pasalic comes over from the Croatian League as a Facundo Torres replacement. He already has 4 goals and an assist on the season. You have Martin Ojeda, who with 3 goals and 3 assists on the season is really playing well as a creative hub for this team. And then, last but not least, you have Luis Muriel, who I personally counted out last year as a guy who Orlando City wasn't going to be able to rely on. He looked out of shape. He looked unfit. He looked disinterested. Already 2 goals and 3 assists on the season for Luis Muriel. He's keeping Ramiro Enrique and Duncan Maguire off the field. Oscar Pareja has an embarrassment of riches right now in his attack, and his designated players are leading the charge.
These are 2 good takes, fellas. I'm going to talk about Austin. Nico Estevez has his squad in second place in the West right now, which surprised me. And I will be the first one to put my hand up and say I was surprised. But I talked last week about how he has his team playing better defensively. This week, we saw them start to create more chances in transition moments. Brandon Vasquez, their $10 million DP striker, gets off the board and he gets his first goal. And so all that is positive. I like what Owen Wolff is doing, his continued growth and development, his composure, his confidence. He's showing that he's a really important player for this team on both sides of the ball. Now, my 2 concerns are every game has been by a 1-goal margin, whether for them or against them. We saw against San Diego FC how that 1-goal margin leaves the door open, and San Diego almost got back into that game. And my other concern, probably the biggest concern, is Ousmane Bakari. Has yet to show me that he deserves to wear the DP tag. Nico Estevez, the player himself, they have to find a way to get him to the caliber and to the level that they expect, because if he starts hitting his stride and showing his quality in tandem with the likes of Uzuni and Brandon Vasquez, this could be a team that could maintain that position in the top 4 in the West.
All really good takes from you guys. My biggest take is this past week. It's a bit hot in my basement, so I'm just going to open up my sweatshirt here,
Wow.
Celebrating
Wow.
that 3rd place trophy.
Hey,
Do they even get a trophy? What do you mean
It doesn't
trophy?
matter. It doesn't matter. It doesn't
They got
matter.
a participation
That's
medal.
the point.
Hey, you can't slag on 3rd place finishes, okay? I got an Olympic bronze medal, and it still is beautiful sitting in my trophy cabinet. Let's move on, though, because, yes, international players are coming back, and the biggest game, arguably, heading into Matchday 6 that we all have our eyes on is Inter Miami taking on the Philadelphia Union, 2 teams topping in that Eastern Conference. Now, when we look at the Philadelphia Union with Bradley Carnell coming off a big 1-0 performance over St. Louis, Inter Miami coming off that bye week, Dax, I want to jump to you because, I saw you guys midweek in the U.S. Open Cup, the rest and recovery. Is it going to play a factor here for Inter Miami? Was it good that they had that rest and recovery? Obviously, Lionel Messi with that injury as well.
Well, I'm about the same age as all of the superstar Barcelona boys, and I have to tell you that it took me about 4 days to recover from our Open Cup game, okay? So I'm not saying it takes them the same amount of time to recover as me. They're significantly more fit than I am at this point. But yes, this international break came at a great time for Inter Miami. They've started the season really well under Javier Mascherano, unbeaten in every single game that they have played so far this year. But you can see that the wear and tear is already starting early. Lionel Messi has been rested for a few games already, leading into that Atlanta United game where he picked up a small injury and now is recovering once again. But when you're older, when you've got as many games and minutes as this Inter Miami, superstar, quartet has under their belt already, you have to find ways to get them rest. And I think the international break came at a very good time for them. They're too experienced to allow any momentum to be lost. I think this team is just going to continue to pick up right where they left off.
Yeah, but Dax, this is nothing new for this Inter Miami team. It's the same old story from 2024. Messi could be out, Suarez could be out, and the cast around them are the ones who step up. This season, it's been Segovia, it's been Allende, and then even better in the back, it's been Ian Frey and Noah Allen who have stepped up and are really making themselves known to be good starters and contributors on the back line. But same story, doesn't matter who's there, who's not there for Inter Miami, they find ways to win. Fafa Pico coming off the bench to get the winner in Atlanta as well. So they've got a great cast of unsung heroes around the superstars that are continuing to produce.
Speaking of players missing for the Philadelphia Union, because I do want to shift focus to them, because they went into this game undefeated, taking on St. Louis this past week, and they're missing 7 players, 5 of those being key starters, and one of those being Ty Baribo, who's currently leading the Golden Boot race with 6 goals, but they still got the job done. Is it more managers? Because it is the same player with Bradley Carnell taking over this team. They didn't really make any moves in the offseason. Is it good managers, or is he just getting the best out of his players?
I mean, I like this matchup because both teams have new managers, and Mascherano's been brought in to get trophies. Bradley Carnell's been brought in to get Philadelphia Union back into a place where they're contending for trophies. And it was important to me that he found a way to get his team to bounce back after suffering a loss in Nashville. He played against his former side where he got revenge. But I like this Philly team. You guys are singing the praises of Miami, rightfully so. But I like the way Philly lines up against this Miami team. The way that they approach games, they're organized defensively. They have the ability to go and press you. The running both with the ball, off the ball. They play fast in transition moments. To me, they can't be wasteful. That's the first part. But I actually like Philly going into Miami against this aging side that has some young players that can bring some youth and enthusiasm. To me, it'll be a pretty good matchup, and I'm intrigued to see how disciplined Philly can be on both sides of the ball and if they can be clinical enough to get the job done.
Yeah, Mo, I think that Bradley Carnell has done a wonderful job with this Philadelphia Union team. And if we think back to his time with St. Louis City, he actually started with St. Louis City as an expansion team with 5 consecutive victories, set an MLS record in that regard for an expansion team. Bradley Carnell teams, they always start out hot. They always start out fast. My one question and my one concern with this Philly team is always burnout. Will they be able to sustain what they are doing right now deep into the summer months when you guys know it can be a slog to get through those games? I really like this matchup for the Philadelphia Union. Like you said, I think that they're going to have energy. I think they're going to have enthusiasm. They get some big-time players back. And I think Bradley Carnell will have learned from his previous stop at St. Louis City, what led to his dismissal from that club, a long run of not being able to win games. Bradley Carnell strikes me as the type of coach who is able to learn and adapt from what he has already been through before. So I have no concerns about this Philly team going deeper into the season, continuing to play with the same style that they're playing with right now.
Inter Miami welcoming the Philadelphia Union this coming Saturday at 7:30 p.m. Eastern. You can catch it right here on MLS Season Pass. Let's take a look at the Eastern Conference standings through 5 match days here in the 2025 season. It's no surprise looking at top spot. The Philadelphia Union under Bradley Carnell have been phenomenal. Charlotte and Dean Smith's men. Inter Miami coming off that bye weekend. Nashville, Chicago, Columbus, New York, and Orlando rounding out those final playoff positions. At the bottom half of the table, though, Cincinnati, maybe a shock on the season, do have defensive troubles at the moment with injuries. DC, Atlanta, the Revs, Toronto, and Montreal all searching for their first wins on the season. Now, it's been interesting heading into the 2025 season because it has been unpredictable considering the movement and considering the matchups that we have already seen. So Dax, going into this one, you look at Inter Miami, all of us heading into 2025, we know they're the team to beat, but is there any team that you think can throw the gauntlet down here?
Absolutely, Kay. I think there are numerous teams that can throw the gauntlet down. I would go as far to say that this is going to be the most competitive conference that MLS has ever seen with regard to trying to finish in the top four. I see anywhere from 8 to 9 teams being able to be strong enough to compete for a top four spot. You look at the standings right now. You have an Atlanta United team and an FC Cincinnati team who have started the season slow, but I expect them to get much, much better throughout the season, and I expect them to be in the mix for those spots. You have a Chicago Fire team, an Orlando City team, and a Nashville team who, a lot of people didn't really know what to expect, but from what I've seen from these teams early in the season, I think they can be extremely competitive. And then you have the Phillies, you have Inter Miami, and you have Charlotte, who are all right about where we thought they would be. Listen, obviously not Philly. I had them not making the playoffs, but they have proven that they are going to be a contender. So I still look at FC Cincinnati as the biggest threat to dethroning Inter Miami. I think that once they get their center backs healthy, this is a team that's balanced, they have depth, and they have quality to hurt you.
Mo, I want to jump off the tail end of this because Dax has been singing the praises of Nashville for the past 2 weeks, and rightfully so. But have they really been tested here in 2025, considering looking at their opponents?
That's a little bit unfair because Nashville don't make their schedule, right? They play the games that are in front of them, and I'm going to actually co-sign what Dax is saying. I've been impressed with Nashville from a few different lenses. First, I mean, we all know this is their best start through 5 games in the history of their organization being in MLS. This is BJ Callahan's first proper full season. I think the call from fans, from us neutrals, was we want to see Nashville win games and do it in a different way, aesthetically, something that's a little bit more pleasing on the eye. They've delivered that. But to me, they're on this 3-game win streak, right? 8 goals scored, just the 1 conceded, 7 different goal scorers, which to me is important. For so long, we looked at Nashville and said, it's Hani Mukhtar plus what? Right? Is it going to be a set piece goal from Zimmerman? Where are the other goals going to come from? And now they're finding ways to get different goals. I think Ahmed Qasim's come in and given them a little bit of a spark, some creativity. He plays the game in a different way and seems to complement that front line thus far. But I will say the next couple of weeks are going to be incredibly important for this team. Dax mentioned Cincinnati as being one of the teams that will contend in the top 4. I agree. Well, they host Cincinnati this weekend, and then they go on the road to Charlotte, who I know Sasha's absolutely in love with. So I'm curious to see how those 2 matchups go for BJ Callahan and this Nashville side, because if they can get results in both those games, okay, y'all better start putting some respect on their name.
Perfect little segue, Mo, because are you guys done talking about all the Eastern Conference teams that aren't going to contend with Miami so I can talk about the team that actually will? It's Charlotte FC. Listen, Wilfred Zaha is there. You got me flustered, Mo. Wilfred Zaha is their most important player, their best player. I think we could all agree on that, and we haven't seen anything out of him yet. So when he starts firing, I think they're scary in the East. This past weekend against San Jose, they were dominant. The way that they played, the way that they scored goals, they were very good. I don't think anybody's going into the bank this year and taking 3 points from Charlotte. They've made that place a fortress. Dean Smith has got his guys humming. They're very good defensively. This is a team that I think will continue to challenge in the East all season long.
Sash, you think they push for supportership as well?
I think it's possible as long as they keep up their home form. I didn't like the game that they played against Miami away, but I think all the other games they've played this season, they've shown real top quality.
Well, they need their winger, Wilfred Nancy, to really step up, Sash. I'm going to have to disagree with you there. Wilfred Nancy needs to step up immediately.
All right, that's perfect. Let's transition out of our Saturday games into our Sunday night soccer. A huge one here as the Portland Timbers welcome the Houston Dynamo. For the Portland Timbers, coming off a 3-0 loss versus Colorado. Houston looking for their first win of the season. Our coverage beginning at 6 p.m. Eastern, kickoff at 7 p.m. High stakes for both of these teams, gentlemen. And going into this one, looking at the form, which one needs the 3 points more than the other?
Well, I mean, to me, it's pretty clear that it's Portland. Portland's playing at home. Portland are in a position now where they're still trying to really incorporate and ease David Da Costa, maybe not ease, but get him into the system. Find ways to utilize his strengths in the right way to complement the rest of his team. So much comparison is always going to happen. Evander left, he's in. Is he the same player? He's not the same player. And I can appreciate that and I can respect that. I've covered their last 2 games against Galaxy at home and then Colorado on the road. And I would say the last game against Colorado on the road is the best that I've seen from David Da Costa. Is it the final product? No. But I saw what he can bring to this team. And it's in a game where the game is more open, when they're playing in transition, when there's more space to exploit. He's really good running with the ball. He's really good running off the ball. And it looked like in that last match against Colorado, Portland are finally starting to find a way to utilize him a little bit better. Santiago Moreno's playing more. He's back into the fold, which is going to add a different dynamic to that attack. The other side for that is Finn Sermon, a young center back, just 21 years old. The coaches think the world of him and really believe in his potential. And that last match against Colorado, you could see why. He looked confident. He looked good with his timing, his understanding and reading of the game for just a young player. And he's becoming a centerpiece of that back line going forward.
I hate to say this after only 5 weeks of the season, but this feels like a must-win game at home for Portland in order to continue the progress that they've made early in this season. They're playing against a Houston team that is ripe for the taking right now, a team that doesn't scare anybody in attack. And you got to remember, Houston was on Sunday Night Soccer a few weeks ago against Miami and laid an absolute dud. They were dominated. They were not competitive in that match. It wasn't even close. Portland has to go in this game thinking that 3 points now is very important going towards the end of their season. When they look back, they'll know that they should have won this game.
Dax, now there has been some huge shifts for the Houston Dynamo this season. No Coco Carrasquilla, no Hector Herrera. For Ben Olsen, how does he flip the script? Because they have no wins on the 2025 season as of yet.
Well, Kay, he has flipped the script. I think after Coco Carrasquilla and Hector Herrera left, Ben Olsen fell asleep and woke up in Washington, D.C., and harken back to his DC United days. For what I see from this Houston Dynamo team is a team that has completely gone away from the identity that made them so good the last couple of seasons. And they've done that. Ben Olsen has done that out of necessity. He does not have the same midfield that he had last year. His attacking players, they all offer the same profile. If we go back to the game that they drew on the road against the Seattle Sounders, you started a midfield of Sebastian Kowalczyk, Amin Bassi, and Nico Ladero. All very good players in their own right, but they're too similar. Ezekiel Ponce is starved for service right now. They have no pace to get in behind a back line. Sasha said it. They just don't scare anyone. They're not threatening. When your right fullback, Griffin Dorsey, is your most dangerous player on the overlap to get in behind and to cause a different problem with more verticality against an opponent, you're always going to struggle to score goals. So what has Ben Olsen done? He's just said, listen, we're going to be hard to beat. We're going to be hard to break down. They've gone on the road in against Columbus Crew and against the Seattle Sounders 2 of the last 3 weeks and gotten shutouts. And that is the recipe right now for this team until they can bring in some reinforcements and start to play a little bit better in the attack.
Yeah, but are those reinforcements coming? And can you 0-0 your way to the playoffs? No, the answer is no. Houston has to find a way to create chances in some way, and that's going to have to be on Ben Olsen. I understand right now with the players that he has at the back, he can't build up and play through the midfield the way he used to, but you've got to find ways to create more chances. Whether it's just set pieces or anything like that, they have to find a way to score goals because 0-0 is not going to get you to the playoffs.
There is other teams that remain winless on the season. 6 other teams remain winless on the season. Montreal, Toronto, Sporting Kansas City, New England Revolution, Houston that we just spoke about, and the LA Galaxy. Now, all of you guys said last week that we shouldn't have any cause for concern for the LA Galaxy, but taking a look at this list of teams, there's pressure on, not only for the managers, but for the players. So Dax, let's start with you. Can any of these teams looking at them right now give us a little bit of hope, and maybe they've just had a slow start to the season?
Well, the graphic isn't helping me because I was going to talk about New England. Okay,
you can thank our producer.
Looking at that, I still don't have as many concerns about the LA Galaxy as I do about some of those other teams on that list. Greg Vanney is a multi-time MLS Cup champion. He will be getting some of his best players back healthy at some point this season. I don't worry about the LA Galaxy as much as I do a New England Revolution, who, by the way, still don't have a player on their roster who has scored a goal this year. The only goal they've scored has come from Own Goal, who is a very good goal scorer in his own right, but I don't think you can rely on that to sustain success throughout the season. The New England Revolution have really struggled. They looked better and more compact defensively, which is something that Caleb Porter really wanted to try to improve with this team, but he's traded that for absolutely no attacking punch. And then you add on to the fact that Carlos Hill is a year older and Leo Campana, their marquee striker signing, is out injured for the next couple of weeks. I still think this is going to get worse before it gets better for New England. And I think Caleb Porter will be feeling a lot of pressure right now.
Dax, I'm just going to go ahead and jump in and say own goal is an absolute baller. All right. The kid is ageless, doesn't miss a beat. He's been scoring goals for years. And
own goal is the only person that's not affected by father time. You are correct, Mo.
Exactly. I want to talk about Sporting Kansas City, but the only thing I'll say on Galaxy is they got to just be careful that the hole doesn't get too deep for them to try to recover from. But Sporting Kansas City is a team that I am worried about because it seems to be a trend that we're seeing too often in the last few years with these slow starts, right? You go back to, or this season, if you dated back to September of last year, it's now 10 games without them having a win, 12 in all competitions. But if you go back to 2023, it took 11 games for them to get their first win. Yes, they did rebound that year, got into the Western Conference semis and lost. Last season, they had 2 wins in their first 16 games. The 2 wins were against San Jose, who's the only team that finished lower than them in the West, and then against TFC, who finished 11th, right? So my concern is, do they have the pieces? Do they have the tools to now fix this and get them into winning form? Their next game is away at Dallas, who hasn't been good at home. They've lost their 2 games at home and have picked up all their points on the road. But I can't sit here and look you in the eyes and say that I'm confident that Sporting Kansas City will go on the road to Dallas and get a win there, or get their first win of the season.
I'd make you guys both right. The situations are dire in New England and Sporting Kansas City, but I think it's the most dire in Toronto. Look at this club. This is a club, when you compare them to Montreal, and I talked in the beginning of the show about Montreal's roster spend, what do you expect? But when you talk about Toronto and their roster spend, you have to look squarely at Lorenzo Insigne. This guy is the second highest paid player in the league. He finally gets off the bench and gets to play in this game against the New York Red Bulls last weekend. 0 shots, 0 key passes, 0 passes into the opponent's box. Embarrassing. Embarrassing is the word. There's nothing more you can say about Lorenzo Insigne. Compared to the salary he's being paid and the way he's playing soccer, it's embarrassing. This club is dire right now. They have to figure something out. They have to change lots of stuff in Toronto. And just like you said, I don't think it's getting better anytime soon. This is a really tough job for Robin Fraser. Hopefully he gets the time to try to make the tweaks himself to make things right in Toronto. But it's tough to envision them winning a game anytime soon.
And let's take a look, though, heading into match day 6, because there is some mouth-watering matchups. You have Toronto taking on Vancouver, Canadian versus Canadian team. The Rebs looking for their first win, but will welcome the New York Rebels. Minnesota United looking to bounce back after back-to-back draws against RSL Chicago. 3 consecutive wins. They welcome a struggling Montreal side. St. Louis welcoming Austin. And then our Sunday night soccer matchup, the Portland Timbers welcoming the Houston Dynamo. There's also some other noise in and around the league, and it's around the managers. There was a lot of new managers after the 2024 season heading into 2025. Dax, for you, who's really impressed you early on in this season?
Mikey Veras and that San Diego team. I know from personal experience that going to an expansion club is extremely difficult. And there was not a lot of buzz around this San Diego team. There wasn't a lot of information regarding, the players that they were signing, how well people thought they were going to do. Yes, they signed Chucky Lozano, but for the most part, there wasn't any real oomph in that roster build. And that's why all of us experts and us pundits had them finishing at the bottom of the West. They have proven us wrong, and they've not only proven us wrong, but they've done it in style. This team has done nothing but preach how they're going to play. They're going to play beautiful possession soccer out of the back. And me and Sasha Kleshchin both said, it's easy to say that, but when you go on the road to the LA Galaxy, the defending champs, and you lose possession right away, and that doubt starts to creep in, how will you act? They've done nothing but done the same things over and over and over again. And I know they're coming off their first loss of the season to Austin, but they still looked good. They looked like they could have equalized in that game. The only question mark I have going forward for this team, I don't think they're going to struggle to score goals. I think they'll create enough chances. It's if they're going to play with a very high back line, you're asking for trouble. I think Mikey Veras needs to figure out, especially going back to this Austin game, if he is the risk worth the reward, because those defenders were on an island and Austin could have scored 4 or 5 goals. Regardless, I've been so impressed with Mikey Veras and what he has done with this expansion team.
Dax, you make some really good points about San Diego. I kind of want to talk about their opponent this weekend because you mentioned the first game of the season for them away at Galaxy. To me, that set the tone for a budding rivalry there with them getting that victory. Now they're playing against LAFC, potential for another rivalry to start really forming. And you also talk about the high back line for San Diego. LAFC and the players that they have to expose that are in numbers, right? We saw this past weekend, David Martinez and his quality. The kid is talented. He's growing with every game that he gets, with the more minutes that he gets. He doesn't shy away from expressing that confidence either. And he plays a game a little bit more freestylish, if that makes sense, right? Where he just utilizes his natural instincts, comes inside a little bit more. But I like it for him. He's still a young player. I know LAFC have gone out and signed Cengiz Under, so that's competition for him, which I think is great. LAFC is showing that they have depth in their forward positions, but for a young player like David Martinez to have to go out there and prove week in and week out that he needs to be in that team, whether it's replacing Under, whether it's potentially playing on the opposite side and moving Bouanga centrally, I love the opportunity that's in front of him, and he's shown me in minutes so far this season that he can be a game changer for LAFC.
If you're Steve Trundolo, who is your starting front three for that team? Because we have seen rotation.
Yeah, as much as I'm singing the praises of Martinez at the moment, I would probably still lean on Under because of his experience. But that being, so let me give you the front three. So Under on one side, obviously Bouanga and Obobisi. Obobisi would be my 9 at the moment. But Martinez gives you flexibility. The other part, and I don't know if we'll ever see it play out, he's naturally a number 10. I'm curious to see if at any point, if Giroud gets back into the team, if they play with the number 10. Because I feel like that's how you might be able to get the best out of Olivier Giroud, to have a player who's playing closer to him centrally that helps to connect passes with him and can free him up. But my front three at the moment would be Cengiz Under on one side, Denny Bouanga on the opposite side, and Jeremy Ebobisse as a 9.
All right, Mo. And then who would be your backup number 9? Would it be Olivier Giroud or Nathan Ordaz?
Woo!
With that being said, Mo, do you want me to just move on for you?
No, you know what? That's a fair question. Do you know what? I would say my backup number 9 would be Giroud only for this reason, because he's a different profile. I feel like you might get a little bit more similarities in terms of the running off the ball, the running in behind from Nathan Ordaz. I love what Nathan Ordaz has done this season. He's come in confident, he's come in fit, and he's come in with a chip on his shoulder to prove that he deserves to get more minutes, and rightfully so. And the beauty of him is he can play in wide positions as well.
All right. Dax, did you get your answer? Do you agree
I
with it?
did.
You got that cheeky
I was
little
very
smile.
satisfied with that response.
All right, Sasha, I know you've been loving Greg Berhalter with the Chicago Fire. They're coming off 3 straight wins. He's completely transformed this team.
Yeah, he's been one of the managers, I think, that's new in 2025 that has been the most impressive, but we shouldn't be surprised by it because he had a style of play in Columbus that looks exactly the same as what it is in Chicago right now, and the players are buying in. What has been impressive is that they've had the ability to go on the road and pick up 3 straight road wins, which this team hasn't done since 2009, I think. So that's been amazing. And when I say we shouldn't be surprised, it's Hugo Kuipers who has 5 goals in his last 4 games. If you look back to the Columbus teams that Greg Berhalter had, Ola Kamara had his best season under him. Kai Kamara had his best season under Berhalter. Giassi Zardes probably had his best season under Greg Berhalter. He sets up his center forwards to score goals in easy positions through the run of play. So it's repeatable. And I think Chicago, without their best starting 11 yet because they've dealt with injuries, still can be a very good contender for a playoff spot in the East this season.
Any other managers on your guys' radars that we haven't hit? Maybe, I know we spoke about Bradley Cornell, Estevez, Mellberg, maybe Mascherano we've spoken about. And Dax, actually, I want to ask you with BJ Callahan, because we keep going back and forth on this on MLS 360, that I'm not sold yet on Nashville. I'm not throwing them under the bus yet. But what has he done that's impressed you so much, maybe tactically, for this Nashville side?
Yeah, he's given this Nashville team a new identity, which is not easy to do. This roster has been turned over quite significantly in midfield, I think, which has helped him form that tactical identity. This is not the plucky underdog anymore. This is not a team that scores one goal and wants to sit back to defend a lead for the rest of the game. This is a team that wants to play on the front foot, and they can play in a multitude of different ways. They can keep possession, more possession than they have ever in their existence, or they can play in transition. And I think Mo did a great job talking about their new player, Ahmed Qasim, who he adds a different profile to this team. Hani Mukhtar, not only the goal scoring burden fell on him pretty much for their entire existence, but also the creative burden as well. And when you add players like a Gaston Brugman, an Ahmed Qasim into the midfield, this team just has a lot of different weapons, and they're playing with a lot more confidence than they have in the past. So I expect this run-in right now, their next 2 or 3 games are going to be a massive test for them. We're really going to see what they're all about, Kay. And listen, we're going to see if your opinion is more correct or mine for these next 3 games. It'll be some fun banter there on the show.
I love it. Mo,
Okay.
anything?
Yeah, I would just add, and I've already sang his praises before, but Jesper Sorensen, and the reason I bring his name up again is I've already highlighted the way he's utilized the depth of his squad, part of it out of necessity, but also instilling confidence in young players. Jaden Nelson's flourishing at the moment. But my eyes are really focused on this Vancouver side and this manager this week because they had their first moment of failure, I guess you would say, where they lost a game. Everything they've been flying high. They've been perfect throughout the regular season, doing well in CONCACAF Champions Cup. Now they have a little bit of a bump in the road. So I'm curious to see the response and how they go ahead and get a result against a TFC side that's struggling.
Someone that's not struggling. That does it for us here on
Love
This is
trophy.
MLS. Caleb,
Third place.
Carl,
Yeah.
Mo, Adu, and Dax McCarty. Thank you guys all so much for joining us. We'll see you next week on This is MLS.